Blog Talk Radio.
Should be saying good evening, but it's actually morning. This is a special version of the LNP show, Late Night Parent Radio Show. I'm Ted Hicks, and I'm pleased to have on the line someone that we've been trying to connect since, I think, week 1 or week 2 of the show, the lovely Janet Allison, founders of Boys Alive. Janet, how are you doing?
I'm awesome, Ted. Great to be here. Morning, afternoon, or evening. It's great to be with you.
Same here. And, Janet is the founder of Boys Alive. She's a veteran educator and now educational consultant. She's an author, speaker, family coach, all the above. I mean, the portfolio is pretty full there, Janet, and for some way, somehow, we were able to get you booked. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah. Ted, I always have to laugh when I'm introduced, and because probably the most important credential, which you didn't mention, is that I'm a mom, and
Exactly.
I'm a mom of girls. I have to always confess that I raised daughters. They're grown and out in the world, and people, they ask me, how many boys did you raise? And I have to say, I haven't raised boys, so my hats are off to all of you who are in the trenches raising boys, but I was a teacher to many, many boys, and that is how I became so fascinated with them, and that's fast forward 20 years, and here we are sitting here talking this day about boys.
Yes, and that's the beautiful thing about it is you're a mom, you're a mom and I'm a dad. So those are titles that are, they're a part of us. So I guess the title, it doesn't go, sometimes just doesn't get mentioned, but first and foremost, that is the number one title. And
yeah.
I mean, that, more importantly from, your daughters that are grown now, because back then, maybe, 10 or 15 years ago, you were mommy, now you're mom. So
mom
and
friend. And
yes,
friend, which
yes.
is, ultimately
Mom,
what we want for our relationship with our kids. And that is part of why I do the work that I do, because I feel like it's so crucial that we connect deeply with our children, and in order to do that, we need to understand them, not necessarily through our own eyes. So for me, through my female eyes, looking at this boy, and I think about all the teachers out there in elementary schools, especially because about 93% of elementary school teachers are women, and they're looking through those female eyes at these boys. And we'll get into this more deeply in the hour, but it's really changing that view and understanding our boys with a different lens, with this idea of, the genders are so different. Boys are so different than girls. Let's understand the facts, the scientific basis behind that, so that we can deepen all of our relationships, because everything I talk about also applies in partnerships and in business,
yes,
and in all of our connections to each other.
So true, so true. So tell me, what's happening in beautiful Portland, Oregon?
Portland, it's a busy place, although I'm not there very often because I'm traveling so much this fall, which I love. I was recently in LA with parent coaches and helping them understand boys and also presentation skills. and I will be in Carmel. I would love to come to the East Coast, Ted, so let's make something happen out there. And I'll be in Seattle, and I love, I will travel virtually and in person because I feel like this message is so important to get out to our parents and teachers to help them understand their boys. And that means understanding their girls that much better, too. So it lifts us all up.
Well, that's true. That's true. And I can speak for, with my wife and I, together we have a son and a daughter. The daughter is soon to be 13, so she's already approaching the I don't know, that teen attitude. That's another conversation for another day. But my son, he turned 7 this summer, and I got to tell you, because when the last time we talked, I was, sharing with you how he kind of bounces off the walls and he's jumping around, and there's just always a burst of energy, and just trying to get him to slow down, trying not to say something to him 5 and 6 times, Janet, is something that in the beginning, and I speak, I shoot from the hip, I speak straight, Janet. I was wondering, I said, is there something wrong? Because I'm sitting here, and I'm saying,
not a thing.
Right.
So I'm so glad we have so much time, because I really want to bring us back to a beginning place, and the lead-in will help us all understand what is going on with your 7-year-old who is active all the time. And so I invite you to think back a few million years to the hunter-gatherers, and to really think about what, every quality they developed, every brain cell, every hormone was designed to help us survive, males and females, hunters and gatherers. And so and we don't evolve that quickly. So our brains were designed, and we're still carrying those brains around, the hunter-gatherer brain. And when we look at the male brain, what were they designed to do? They had to go out and hunt.
Okay.
So that was being physical. That was moving through the landscape. And scientists have figured out that they traveled about 12 miles a day. So in that traveling, they were, the skill of spatial awareness developed. So the brain evolved to have more centers that were spatially aware. So you had to go out on this unknown landscape, be able to find your way, and then be able to find your way back. So that skill of spatial awareness developed strongly in males. Okay. So very physical, very visual, because they had to scan the landscape to find the animal, to look at the vegetation, to see what was out of place, out of the pattern, out of the norm, because that was either going to be a threat or that was going to be where the animal was. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
So fast forward to your 7-year-old today, he has this hardwired nature, this innate need to move and to process in movement. So what do we do with our kids? We send them to school, and the female teacher's there saying, 7-year-old, sit still, sit in your desk, sit in this desk, sit in this chair, sit still, listen, and learn. And that's like against everything he especially is hardwired to do.
Right.
And there's a lot in the press right now, and I'm so glad about our children and needing to move in order to process their learning. And, the awareness is building. But, Ted, we've got to create a revolution here. for these boys especially. And there are girls, too, that definitely need to have more movement, and it benefits all of us. That's the bottom line. We need to be able to stand in the classroom. We need to be able to lay on our tummies. You know, I don't know about you, but when I did my homework as a kid, I was always laying on the floor.
Correct.
And that's a great way to be in learning. Your stomach is being stimulated by by being on the carpet or wherever you are and rolling around and wiggling a little bit. And it's okay. That's the thing. We have to see that it is absolutely okay and normal for our kids and us to be in movement throughout our learning processes.
I think the nuggets that you just given us, very, very helpful, and I'm going to hold them close to me because I will definitely tell you, after being in school all week long with him, so during the week, we'll have a day where there's like an hour of swimming. There's an hour of basketball. There's about 45 to 50 minutes of soccer time. Then there's, of course, when he gets home, there's time for reading and, of course, with doing your homework and everything else like that. But also to spend time socially with his sister and with others.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to focus so much on the extracurricular activity, but I just think it's needed for someone at that age because he's just he's a ball of energy, Janet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he needs to be physical before anything else, and that means he needs to be physical before school. I really encourage parents to, and this is good for parents too. My first grade, I had 10 boys and 2 girls, and that's why I founded Boys Alive, because I didn't know what to do with those boys. But I just intuitively took them out every single morning. We ran, we walked balanced on top of fences, we were swinging, we were hanging, we were climbing, and that physical movement before school enabled them to be able to come into the classroom and be ready to learn. So what do we do now? They ride a bus. They, get dropped off at the door. They've been in the car for however long the commute was. So to be able to build in some activity time before school, your teacher will thank you, and your son will thank you that he's had this time to move. And, if you're living in an apartment and it's hard to get out, I encourage parents, it's a little bit of a joke now, but I encourage you to exchange your coffee table for a mini trampoline.
Smart idea there.
I've already told you, Ted, you have to give up on your couch, but now I'm telling you, you have to give up on your coffee table too, and replace it with a mini trampoline. And they are awesome. And what you'll find is that as your boy jumps and moves, he'll start to talk. So if you have a boy who's not very talkative or a girl, that movement actually stimulates the verbal centers and gets everything connected, and he's more willing to talk. Another thing that you could, isn't that awesome? Just get out.
It really is.
Yeah. And then another thing I love for inside is those they're metal bar, they're chin-up bars, I think they're called, and you screw them into the door jamb.
Yes.
So you can do chin-ups, or you can wrap a cloth around it, and it can be a swing or a little hammock. It's endless hours of physical activity. So mini trampoline and a chin-up bar, and you're pretty good to go for indoor activity, indoor movement.
Janet, I just want to jump on to the last topic, and totally a great idea. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, because during the school day, the only time they actually have to burn a little energy is A, during recess, or B, maybe 1 or 2 days a week when they have physical education. It's definitely needed, and it has me, I'm going to actually go back to my wife Pam and say, okay, we have to reevaluate some things because obviously the swimming and the soccer and the basketball might not be enough. Whereas, it's so funny because I'm as you were explaining the story, I was laughing because my child care provider had medium to large size trampoline in her backyard, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I guess they use it a lot more than what I thought they used it,
Yeah. So there's two things I want to highlight. One of them is kids need about 70 minutes of just plain activity, physical activity, not structured physical activity, but time to play. Time to play, and as they're playing, they're processing, they're digesting all the interactions that have happened during the day, all of the, mom said, dad said, teacher said, kids, friends said, and that's the way they're processing. Boys
just to clarify, Janet, just to clarify, that's 70 minutes a day that you're mentioning, correct? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
Think back to when we were kids, Ted. We were outside from, I don't know about you, but pretty much from after school till dark. And nobody was telling us, nobody was there with the whistle, and we were doing soccer drills or we were doing whatever. It was free play. And in that free play, there was also the interaction of creating new rules for games, arguing about rules for games, figuring out social dynamics and interpersonal relationships in a free-ranging kind of way, not so structured. So that's one piece.
I have to stop you. I have to stop you for a minute, Janet, because so many different thoughts are going through my mind right now. Because as parents, we sit here and we look at we think of when we were small. We think of being on a block where all your other friends lived on the block, and nowadays most of these kids are in their homes on their Xbox or PlayStation, or staring into a screen at Facebook. And I could see the lack of interaction. So your points are dead on. I just want to let you know that.
And we're going to have to bookmark all these topics because each one of them we could talk about for an hour or more.
Yes.
But I want to get back to the second thing, and that is one of my soapboxes is we have got to educate teachers about boys and about what they need in the classroom. What many teachers have told me is they're afraid to let boys and girls have this more movement in the classroom. Yet what they find when they've gone through training with me is that they recognize that if I get my kids up and moving every 20 minutes or so, and that's for a simple, I call them brain breaks, a minute, get up and let's, dance for 20 seconds and do 5 jumping jacks and give each other high fives. What happens is more blood flow equals more oxygen equals, oh, my brain is awake, I can think. And laughter happens, social relationships, everybody feels good and energized. And it takes a minute. Sit back down, everybody's heightened and ready to focus again. And it's such a simple thing that has huge, huge impact. And the other piece of that is when teachers when they recognize, okay, my boy isn't going to be able to sit in a chair and sit still, so I'm going to give him a fidget, something to do, a squeeze ball, something to do with his hand, or I'm going to put a rubber big rubber bands on the bottom of his chair so his feet can be playing with that. Or I'm going to make a place in the back of the classroom where he can stand up and do his work. Or I'm going to let them have clipboards and they can lay down and go over in the corner and do their spelling words, or lay down on the floor and move around the classroom. And what teachers have found when they kind of have this new view is that their kids are actually more attentive, and they don't get wild and crazy. They're actually more able to come back and be attentive and listen because they've had this need met, this hardwired need to move has been met.
Awesome. I don't want to get off and start talking about another topic because, like I said, we could probably be here for about at least a half a day talking about it. So I guess my next question for you is, so I mentioned I have a son and a daughter, and they're both competing in Catholic youth organization sports, and there's times when, let's say, a situation like yesterday. Yesterday was a scrimmage for my daughter's team, and a lot of times what I try to do is just have the positive reinforcement on both ends. So my daughter my daughter and my wife, will accompany us for my son's game and vice versa. Certain times, my daughter might not have a good game, and my son is the first one to say, you know what, you really kind of stunk it up, or you could have done X, Y, and Z. If I was in there, I would have done this, but when my daughter attends, her younger brother's games, it's okay, you didn't have a great game, this is what you could do, and it's saying the same thing, but it's all about how you say it. So I just want to know from you, from my son's perspective, what do I do? What are some of the best practices I can use to kind of turn that around so that he's a little bit more positive and not as snarky with her?
Okay, first thing I'm going to ask you is, what was her response to his, what you are calling snarky, but might have just been completely genuine feedback? What was her response to that?
Janet, her first response was shut up. And I said, okay, that's it. Stop. I'm telling them both, stop. Okay, that's enough. Let's take a minute. Let's take a minute and get our thoughts together, and let's try to address each other the right way. And as good as that sounds, it just never works, Janet.
Yeah. So, if I were sitting with you, if you were if I were family coaching with you, I work with parents all the time around, creating a strong action plan and, many scenarios like this, siblings, bickering, all of that. Recognizing that boys in general, and this is broad generalizations because everyone is different, but, it's the world is black and white. It's just like he sees it and he calls it as he sees it. And part of that is testosterone. And testosterone is that male hormone that creates our men, creates this drive, creates the aggression, the assertiveness, the risk-taking behavior. All of that is fueled by testosterone. And part of that is then not being so able to cue into the other person's feelings. So boys are pretty egocentric. And you may be inclined to say, hey, can't you, step into her shoes, see how that feels to her. He actually can't do that. That's really hard for boys to do. On the other hand, take your daughter, and girls and women, are more fueled by oxytocin, that tend and befriend hormone. And that hormone is what drives us to stay in relationship. And again, it's back to the gatherers, because our survival as females was that we could stay connected to others. So being in relationship is the driver for us, not so much for guys. So you can see from her perspective, she wants to stay in relationship with him, and that may not sound like it when she's telling him to shut up, but ultimately her feedback to him would be more in a positive frame of mind. So she would be coming from that oxytocin place of keeping in relationship place. So keep that in mind as they're connecting to each other. And you know, it's not always going to be positive feedback. And to kind of let some of that slide and let them work that out as siblings with each other and stay out of it. You know, we get really micromanaging as parents, and we want to, every conversation has to be sweet and kind and nice. And it's not going to be. It's just not. So to let them kind of work that out in a way, and then overall you have your family values that, yes, we are kind and we are, positive thinkers and all of that. But there's going to be a place where they can just have their sibling connection in that way and let them work it out. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally makes sense. And I should have also told you, currently right now they're in the same school, with him being in the second grade and my daughter being in the seventh grade. So I do see there's times when, and there's times when I'll go to my son, Janet, and tell him, okay, number one, that's your sister. Number two, yes, you do need to be nice to her. But number three, when you're at school, she's looking out for you.
Yeah.
And just positively, I try to just reinforce that and just, keep planting those seeds in his head that I'm like, she's in your corner, so taking a pot shot at her all the time might not be the smartest thing.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's where you have to land. I think that's a good place to be, and part of it is helping him find words. So again, with the male brain, as I said, there was more spatial places to process spatially and visually. That means there's less places to process verbally. So the male brain is less connected to, less connects emotions, feelings to words. That connection's harder to get. And what fosters that connection is physical activity, physical movement. So the more he moves, he's able to speak and able to connect to his emotions, connect words to his emotions. That makes sense?
Oh, totally.
So moving first, then feelings, emotions, words, that's the limbic system. Then that part kind of turns on and that's more able to connect. But part of that, too, is that for many boys, they don't have the emotional vocabulary. They don't come in with all the nuances of feelings. So as the parents, as the teachers, we really need to help him connect his feelings to words. So girls, because of oxytocin, they're better able to connect, and girls actually process verbally, and that's helping them come up. I mean, it's like they're having the feeling and they're processing the feeling at the same time. I'm sure you've experienced this, Ed. But for boys, it's a separate thing. So we need to help them connect their feelings to the words, to the emotions. And for young boys, I tell parents all the time, help him find a picture, an image that he can connect to. And this is most often around anger. So you've got a 5-year-old boy who's, just angry all the time, throws things. Help him find an image that he can kind of connect that anger to. So are you as angry as a volcano? Are you as angry as a grumpy old bear that got woke up in the winter? Something like that can then become kind of his icon for that feeling. And then you can work with it in so many ways, connecting the feelings to that bear, for instance. And not just the bad feelings, not just anger, but the joyful feelings, too, to help them expand their range of emotions and feelings.
Okay. I do have to go.
That's a whole nother hour, Ted.
I know.
That's a lot.
I know. I do have to go off topic for, if we could just take 5 minutes out. If we could take 5 minutes out. And I have to go off on this topic. And I was leaning there about 10 minutes or so ago because it's something that's just, I don't know, it's just been stuck with me. And as I mentioned earlier, it's stuck on me because, so yesterday I attended a funeral for a very close friend of mine for his dad. So he lost his battle with cancer. So what I noticed was, so all my friends, we gathered together, and so we're now in our 40s, but these are people that that I grew up with, all on we all lived around about in a 2 or 3 block radius. And every day we would go outside and, stop by this one's house and see if this one is going to come out to play. And what I'm noticing today is that doesn't exist anymore. And I don't know if you can summarize it in 5 minutes. And like I said, we have a lot of topics here that this is great because this means you're going to have to come back.
Okay.
But I just want to say to you, Janet, that I'm bothered by the fact that our children today are so heavily involved in social media that it seems like they don't have the oratory skills when someone is in front of them to have a conversation. You'll see a group of kids together, and you'll see everyone looking at their phone, and they're texting each other versus actually having the conversation. And I don't know, it's drives me crazy. So I just wanted
crazy too. Yeah.
I really wanted your take on that.
Well, I think that it's so important for us as adults to help them manage it. I think that, it was a revelation for me about 20 years ago, and this was like before cell phones, when I realized I didn't have to answer my phone every time it rang, and we're talking landline, at my house. I didn't have to answer the phone. And that was so huge for me that, wow, I can actually create this space for my family in the evening where I don't answer the phone when it rings. So fast forward to now, and I know we are swamped by media. And so I think that we as adults have to say no. We have to draw the parameters. And what I've found from several middle school age kids that I've talked to that are, on their phones and plugged into social media is that actually I asked one girl, and she said, I said, do you like this? Do you like being on this all the time? And she looked at me with these big eyes, and she said, no. I said, what would you be doing instead? She said, I'd be outside playing with my brother. So it's so important for us as adults to recognize that we need to say no. We need to give them a break from it. It's like an addiction, and we need to give them a break from it. So we create at our homes you put your phone in the basket when you get home, and we have 3 hours of phone-free time, or, whatever it is for each family. And, of course, then the adult has to be willing also to engage in that parameter as well. But we have to draw the line and say, no. My daughter is recently visiting me, and I have had to ask her, I said, let's just have this be phone-free time. And she's fine with it. Otherwise, it's just a habit, and it's just there. But if you say, as the adult, this is phone-free time, this is screen-free time, they'll get back to it. They're not going to die. But I think it's for us also to experience that for ourselves. I encourage parents to go, try it. Go for a walk and leave your phone at home, and tell your child you're leaving your phone at home, and see how different the interaction is, if you're going for a walk. There's so many parents who walk with their youngsters and they're on the phone, or they have their earbuds in, and they're missing all that verbal interaction. And we have to, the art of conversation, Ted, we have to hold on to that. And so we have to say no to media and create that time of the dinner table, or, Saturday morning, whatever it is for your individual family, but to be willing to take a stand and say no to phones and screens.
So, Janet, I'll let you in on something. So Thursday night is our family night. We usually go out to eat, and we usually say no phones, Mm-hmm. So that goes for myself, my wife, my daughter, and I'll, even tell my son, leave your video game here. Leave your little Sony, I forgot, it's a little handheld game that he plays with. And I'm like, leave it here. You don't need it. Mm-hmm. We're going to sit. We're going to talk amongst each other. And nice. You're going to be forced for the next 60 minutes to talk to me.
Or just sit quietly with me. Just be in silence together. That's also rich connection. So what's their response to that?
Daughter is a little against it, but she complies. She complies because I paid a cell phone bill.
But Ted, truly, if you were to ask her maybe a year from now, 5 years from now, and she was reflecting back, I would guess she would say, yeah, that was really good. It was good to have that time.
Definitely.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, they're going to grouse about it. But, even to just say, you know what, this whole weekend we're having family time, and there's no phones this weekend. And they'll get mad, but they'll let that go, and they'll slide into, get some board games out, be old-fashioned. It's good. It's really good to connect on that level. And it's good for us, too, as adults, to just let it go. And, your emails will be there on Monday morning, but your family's growing, and you need to keep that connection. That's just so important.
I will tell you this. It kind of hit me yesterday at the practice. So in another year or so, she's going to be planning to go to high school because, we're already starting to visit high schools. And, right after that, Janet, 4 more years, and she's off to college.
Yep.
And you're sitting there like, where did the years go?
Yeah.
So I plan to be much more in tune with my son because, after going through it with one and you're seeing another one, he's growing up before, our children grow up before our very eyes. And with you having your daughters are grown, you could definitely speak to that. I mean, it's I guess my question to you is, as they grow up, as this time passes on, do you find yourself, I mean, even yourself, with all the great work that you've done, kind of second-guessing yourself, saying, hey, I could have done this differently, or maybe I should have applied, this tactic, or, do you find yourself, kind of really just questioning yourself on any, of the situations that you've dealt with raising your daughters?
Well, I'm chuckling because I think it's such a cliche when we say it goes by so fast. I mean, parents of infants are thinking, I'm going to be in this stage forever, and yet it does. It goes by so fast, and the joy then becomes watching them go out in the world and make their way and find their joys and their passions. And my daughter was in Africa in the Peace Corps for 2 years, and I went to see her over there, but it had been 14 months since we'd seen each other. We'd only been able to Skype 2 times in that 14 months, and we were able to text but not talk very often. So, I mean, that was a long time, over a year. I walked out into the lobby at the airport, and I looked at her, and it was as if no time had passed. It was, yes. There she was. She's my baby. She's my girl. And
right.
And that is, that right there is what life is all about. And keeping that connection. So fostering the connections every day, day in and day out with our children, and putting aside, what we think is important, the busyness, the, oh my gosh, we've got to get to soccer, hurry up, get your shoes on. All of those, of course we have to do all those things, but ultimately holding that place of just staying in right relationship with our children. And if there's issues, whatever it might be, and of course they're going to go through their phases, getting help for that so that you can get back to your confident parenting self is the most important work, I think, in the world, is to keep those relationships strong and intact. And walking off that plane, I did not, we didn't remember all the times that we played, I don't know, Candy Crush. She taught me Candy Crush on the plane the other day, but she's 26, and I'm,
Okay.
Anyway, but that's not the times you're going to remember. It's all those, the camping trips and the hikes and the, just being silly in the kitchen. The times that you are connected together, and with your boy, it's so much about doing, not talking, but doing things together, and just creating that strong, strong bond that will last a lifetime. And, even more reason to say no to screens and media. And sure, there is a place for that, and maybe you do sit and learn Candy Crush with your child, but when that becomes the bigger amount of time, and they're on their own, that's not fostering those deep connections.
Yeah, you're so true. You're so true.
The joy, my cousin just sent her daughter off to college, and it's such a moment as a parent, but yet it's that place of living into, wow, how much they're accomplishing, how you have built this strong foundation for them to fly from. And there's so much joy in that, in watching that.
So true, so true.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah, and we have the sorrow in our heart. There's the grief. And I still think, oh, my gosh, I loved it when they were 5 and 7, and I miss those times. And that's when you find other kids in the community to be auntie to, or uncle or grandparent to. So.
So true, so true. So tell me, really tell us about Boys Alive, and lately what you've been doing. So have you been on tour? Tell us about your day. What does it consist of?
My day.
Okay.
I So I'm a family coach, so I work with parents individually, and I don't work with children because the parents are the people who make the change in the family. And I see people in Portland, but I also work virtually on Skype or on the phone, and that's described on my website, which is boysalive.com. And I've also created Understanding Your Son 101 because I want parents to have this information. And that is 3 hours of audio along with PDFs and some homework. It's kind of a self-study course. And along with that, for a limited time, I'm offering a 30-minute private session with me so you can get all your questions answered, or some of them. And so my driver is just how to spread this information far and wide and reach the biggest audiences. And, that's why I love what you do, Ted, because you just provide so much information. I give talks at schools and at conferences, so if anyone's needing a keynote or anything like that, I'm certainly available to consider that. Working with teachers is very high on my list so that we can make some changes in the classroom. Many boys feel like school is not for them. And, when we place such a premium on education and, it's just essential that we make school a place where they feel like they fit and they're happy and they're engaged. And so we want to really start in kindergarten and early elementary to change that way of thinking for boys. And so traveling, coaching, talking to you. I have a book, Boys Alive Bring Out Their Best, and that's also at the website. So getting this out and creating the educational context, but also the context at home to make home life fun and harmonious and peaceful. And I always, my driver is to give you practical strategies. What do I do about this? Try this. Try the mini trampoline. Try the chin-up bar. Let him move before school. Make sure he has lots of downtime. Another thing about home is boys are really easily overstimulated, and part of that is clutter and too many toys and too many books on the shelf and rooms just filled with stuff, and that really actually is stressful for not only for us as parents telling them to clean it up, but it's stressful for them. Boys need a lot of clear space to play. And so, clean off the shelf, clean out the toys they're not playing with, and really clear some space, make it simple for them. And that'll take a lot of pressure off parents, too, when they're not, clean up your room. So that helps. And another piece of this that we may not have time to go into deeply, but we'll bookmark it for another time, is this essential driver that boys want to be of service. They need to have a purpose. And so often, especially moms, we're always doing for our children. But boys need to feel capable and feel responsible. And so to give them jobs to do that are part of caring for the family. And this goes for girls too, but it's a more deep-seated need in boys that they, let him help you carry in the groceries. Allow him to do things and be of service.
So true, so true. I will tell you, Janet, from this, not just from this discussion, but overall with reviewing your website and just seeing all the helpful information that you have out there, I mean, I'll just put it out this way. As many times as we can get you to come back and have you discuss whatever the topics might be, it is so helpful to our parents and, mostly to our listeners and future parents also.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, and all of this is, as I said before, it's all about relationships. it is your husband, it is your brother, it is your father, and how can we deepen those connections by understanding that, when I, as a woman, talk too much, ask too many questions in a row, that overwhelms my man, that overwhelms my boy. I need to use less words. I need to ask one question and wait. And that right there, if I didn't talk about anything else but that I've had women in tears telling me that has changed their marriage, that has saved their marriage, just knowing I need to talk less, I need to wait for him, he needs time to process. And I'm not going to take it personally that he's not answering the 5 questions that I've peppered him with.
So true. So true. Oh, my goodness. I feel like you're talking to me right now, Janet.
I know. That's why we're so good together, Ted.
It just hit home where I'm sitting here saying, yes, correct, right? And I'm like, oh, my goodness, is she talking directly to me or is it to the audience? But so helpful. Hey, I do have a quick question before we close. Maybe a couple of questions I have, but one quick question if I can ask you, and let's say if you had 45 seconds and no more than 60 seconds to answer, how much TV is too much for our boys and also our young girls or our children?
My answer, our kids did not watch TV growing up. And very limited, and family time TV is great, movie on Friday night. Think about what they're not doing when they're watching TV. Think about what they're missing out on. They're missing out on being bored and creating something to do out of that boredom. They're missing out on interaction, and many boys will go to screens in order to avoid the interaction because it's hard. It's hard to figure out what mom actually wants or how to have that social interaction. They're not out playing. So that and I know every family has to do it differently, but there's many opportunities missed when they're watching TV or on screens.
You're so correct. I will speak truthfully about the Hicks household. During the school week, TV isn't on for them, and nice. I'm looked at as an ogre in my own house, and but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that because that's one of the things that happens in the household. So you've answered that question. I guess we're going to get ready to close and say, let us know the best ways to not only get in contact with you, but also to follow up, whether it's through social media or through your website. Give us every possible way that we can get in contact with Janet Allison, founder of Boys Alive.
You can go to my website at boysalive.com. I'm on Twitter at Parent Advisor. And you can ask to join our private Facebook group. If you just search Boys Alive, it will bring you to the private Facebook group. And we've got a lively conversation happening there, so please join us. And at boysalive.com, you'll find Understanding Your Son 101, which is a easy way. It's visual and it's verbal, and you can listen to it in the car. But it has so many practical strategies for helping increase your parenting savvy, your confidence, understanding where he's coming from. And, I'm all about practical strategies. So give you the theory, but then tell you how to follow up with what to do day to day. And email me, Janet at boysalive.com. I am available. Ted, I would love to know the questions that your listeners have and what we can specifically address. It would be wonderful to, give them the tools that they're searching for.
I think that's an excellent excellent way to get you to come back on the show. That's an excellent way because, when you put together a program like this and you can just have one guest that can fill up the airtime and that can also provide so many valuable nuggets, it's precious, and I can't thank you enough for just taking the time out to just, as I've said before, this is a partnership, and we definitely want to have you come back because we're always learning. And with parents learn every day. There's always going to be something new about whether it's your child or a situation or, hey, I could have handled that this way. There's always so many opportunities that we get. And Janet, I can't thank you enough because this has been grateful. I'm so grateful for this.
You are so welcome, Ted, and thank you for offering the platform to get this information out there. It's absolutely crucial that we understand this. So thank you, and my pleasure.
You're welcome, and we just want to close it. This was Jen and Allison, the founder of Boys Alive. We're going to, this show will be made available probably later this week, but we want to thank you, and I wanted to also give you a round of applause.
I love
Janet,
it.
thank you.
Thank you.
And the crowd goes wild. Janet, as we said before, thanks again. Thanks so much. And you and I will be working together in the future. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, Ted.
And, folks, that was Jen and Allison from Boys Alive. Just as we've said before, just a really, really great person, a really great leader, an educator, an author, a family coach, someone that you really need to get to know. And we're going to, in the future, bring it back to Late Night Parents, and we're going to talk because we know everyone has questions and all different types of questions. So, but that's going to close tonight's show. Folks, as always, we thank you because this is something we're trying to build here. And we appreciate you listening, at the start of the show, I didn't discuss our affiliates. So from our various affiliates that we have on terrestrial radio, internet radio, new partners that are coming online, really appreciative of all your help in getting this word and getting this news out. So with that, we're going to close, and I think we'll close with Change and Speak.